Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Friday, October 18th, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show. And today is our 2-week roundup show. So we are talking about the last 9 shows that we've had, and we do this every 2 weeks because AI is on its timeline all its own. So there are always updates based on what we talked about in the last 2 weeks. And also there are some things that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about. So let's go back through the 2 weeks. And I actually was just doing some transcript stuff over here. So all the way 2 weeks ago on Monday, we had Beyond Human. Right. So, what happens when AI is more right than humans are right? Because AI can take more information in and process more information at a time than humans can. Then we talked about ChatGPT Canvas, which people are still talking about. I'm still seeing demos about that. We had the news roundup. Then we talked about, is Perplexity killing custom GPTs? And boy, did that spark a lot of conversation. So we're definitely going to talk more about that. Also, Perplexity just added a new feature that's even better than custom GPTs. So there's that. Then we talked about Notebook LM. They've added some features as well, I believe. And then this week, we had I'm like scroll into my new places. Here we go. This week, what was Monday this week, Jimmy? Does anybody?
You're mute.
Oh, good.
That yeah.
Monday.
Sorry.
You're
I was going
muted.
to say
Yeah,
Monday.
go ahead.
Monday this week was Tesla. Is it
Oh,
a
right.
robot company? Is it an AI company? What is Tesla doing?
I have a mental block about Mondays. I'm terribly sorry. Monday was Tesla. Tuesday was spatial intelligence, which is hugely important. Wednesday was news. And yesterday we talked about OpenAI's real-time API. Thank you so much. And so I am Beth, the host today. With me today is Jumi and Andy, and we'll let you know if Carl drops by. All right. So what does anybody have any what's the hot button that you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I think we have to go with Perplexity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. We can spend a good 15 minutes on Perplexity. They're really making some waves out there. Of all the AI services that could stand shoulder to shoulder, in my opinion, with OpenAI, Perplexity seems to be the one. And I'll say that, if we do another show where we say, okay, what are you actually spending money on in subscriptions for your AI services? Well, Perplexity is one of them. I'm paying for the Pro Perplexity service, and I don't, I'm just an individual contributor. I'm not part of a corporate organization. But Perplexity, like OpenAI, is designing their tools to satisfy the requirements of companies. And what they announced this week and released this week is a new kind of internal knowledge search. And what that does compared to custom GPTs is you can upload documents to a custom GPT and you can share those custom GPTs with the rest of your team inside your company. And that's a very valid and practiced way of creating a tool that you can use internally in your organization. Well, Perplexity's just made it possible to upload files to a space. They call them spaces. And it's a kind of a collaboration space for a subgroup of your organization or for the entire organization. You can upload those files, and Perplexity has a different model of search. It's a search engine, which OpenAI is not. So this ends up being, without my having tested it yet, this ends up being, I'll predict, much more accurate and responsive a search vehicle against your internal corporate documents. So you can search simultaneously everything that's in your corporate documents and the web, because that's what, I mean, let's be fair, OpenAI does have web crawling. you can invoke a web search within OpenAI, but that's the native intent of what Perplexity was designed to do. It's a very complete and very sophisticated search index, and it returns results with citations, which as yet OpenAI does not really. So all of those things together means that enterprise workflows are going to be able to use Perplexity in ways that are really, really important. The first one is, you've got internal and external search simultaneously. So if you're looking to do some kind of research for your organization, whether it's on the marketing side or it's on even financial performance comparatively against people in your competitive set, all of that can be done really, really with ease in Perplexity. They have advanced AI models that support the sort of the reasoning, campaigns that all of the major LLMs are pursuing at this point. So the assistance that Perplexity can provide is going to be at the frontier model level because they offer the very best models as options in theirs. And they have 500 internal files for enterprise users. That's I presume that means it's an enterprise account that you have to have with Perplexity. So that's the top news. But there's another little bit of news that we missed on Wednesday. It was on my list. I failed to mention it, which is Perplexity now adds charts. So when you ask for a graphic visualization within your Perplexity query, it's going to generate a graph out of the data that it just retrieved up to the minute from sources on the web or in your internal documents. So you can see that these features of the user interface for Perplexity are really moving quite rapidly towards something that's really capable and satisfying. So I'll leave that as the opener and turn it back over to my colleagues here.
So this for me begs a bunch of questions, like how can I plug it into things? And Cisco, you have a great question here, and it's kind of like along the lines I was thinking, right? Can it connect into Notion? I don't know if it can connect to Notion, but the idea that you could use Perplexity as your internal search or as your document finder sounds really interesting to me, because that can be both work internally and externally, right? Like a lot of FAQs and things like that, you're using something like Zendesk or you're using Notion as your basis for all of that customer facing information. So it would be really interesting if Perplexity could be the inherent search for that group of documents, and then maybe create a Perplexity page out of that information. So not only is it just the straight little FAQ blurb, but it's, oh, this is the topic you're searching for. Let me give you everything you might need that's connected to that topic.
Yeah, in answer to Cisco's point, I use Notion, and we've actually done an experiment here in the Daily AI Show to try to strap Notion into a RAG system, my Notion. And the RAG system that we chose, which is a commercially available one, kind of choked on that. There's too much in my Notion for it to absorb it and be economic. It wasn't doing that very well. Here's what you can do with Notion. You can create an automation that automatically exports and updates to the Perplexity Spaces knowledge document set, everything that's in your Notion data. And then Perplexity has search against that. There, and I'm really optimistic that eventually we'll have the ability to have not only search, but to have the AI assistant that's built into the large language model in Perplexity or some other platform to do this, that will auto-classify and categorize all of the entries in my Notion database. Because if you use Notion like I do, I basically plunk a lot of stuff of that in on a daily basis. But I don't ever have time to go back and say, okay, I'm going to tag this with this category because I want to be able to select those things out. But now if I can add Perplexity search, so, Notion search is not great in my view. I always struggle to use Notion search. But if Perplexity could have that as a knowledge store, and then I can use Perplexity search plus Perplexity's LLMs to do analysis of those things and present visualizations based on information that's retrieved from Notion. So it's doable. Try it. And I think that's in the right direction for where all this is going.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the question that I'm going to ask, but does Perplexity limit the number of files or the amount of space? Because you said for enterprise, but I got in. I didn't finalize creating the space, but I got in to see that I could, with the pro account, have spaces.
Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm assuming that there is a probably smaller number for just a pro user,
Right.
an individual pro user than for the enterprise application. But it's still going to be massive. You're going to be able to put a lot of document storage into your Perplexity space.
And it looked like I could invite other people with my pro account, right? So like and we'll run this experiment. We'll see whether we can do it with the Daily AI show, because I just saw it yesterday. Whether we can invite other pro accounts, because the other thing about collections is that you have, just like a custom GPT, you have a system prompt, right, that affects everything within that collection. So you can run searches, I guess, out of that, or you can run queries. One of the things I think we must have said with Perplexity is that um, you can pick your own LLM, right? So you, like, if you really love Claude and you're like, wow, I really wish Claude had the ability to search the web, it does, right? Like, or I really wish I had the ability to share my Claude searches within that, like with my team, and we can like collect and compile them without doing something. If you have Claude as your default search for that collection, you can have that, right? Like, so Perplexity really does give a ton of function for the for your subscription, for a $20 subscription. It's pretty impressive.
So
Yeah.
I did want to go into one more thing, and I was going to bring this up when in our news segment when we were talking about Perplexity, um, but there's this great article coming in from the Neuron that I thought was pretty great, because I actually hadn't tried Perplexity for these different tasks, and the Neuron said they've got 10 different examples. So let me know if you've done any of these, because this kind of lit a light bulb for me. So apparently you can track stocks. You can enter any stock ticker and it'll generate an interactive chart. So sort of like what you were talking about, Andy, with generating charts and things like that. Um, you can switch up your search between papers, social networks like Reddit and stuff like that. So I know about that one. You can build timelines, so you can track something that's changed over time, like pricing and stuff like that. I thought that was fantastic. You can do a price comparison to find where the best price is. And I think, Cara, you might have talked about this once or twice. Track current events, so you can take snapshot recaps of current events that are happening. Uh, that one's new to me. Research property, so you can research who owns a building or a property, how many they sold, things like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. So okay, bye Zillow. And then the next one is update your SEO. So that's where we were talking about like Perplexity's API, right? So you can you can use the API in your own apps or
Yes.
Google Sheets and things like that for topical maps and keywords. I want to explore that one a little more, because I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. And then the whole purpose of the show was of that episode was custom GPTs, and is Perplexity going to kill those? And they say like number 8 is create GPTs, but for Perplexity. And you had mentioned collections and things like that. Uh, Reasoning, because you can use O1,
Yeah.
and you can create Google alerts. So apparently, someone had built a bot to find the latest news about their competitors, uh, but using Perplexity. So I'm going to explore this top 10 list of things you didn't think Perplexity can do,
Yeah.
because it kind of opened up my mind. I was like, a light bulb here, light bulb there. It's like, oh, what are the components that are activating this? So
Okay.
much more access and technology to take a look there for Perplexity.
I don't know if any of you read yesterday. I think Arvin posted. I think you posted a first feedback from I think a customer, but they were talking about the internal search, and I think there's a person who said, "Oh, it does really good. Look forward to most of the new features. Glean, uh, Glean doesn't work for me." So for those who don't know Glean, there was I think OpenAI denied it, but they said, well, it was one of the 5 companies that when they were doing an investment round, the latest investment round, there was news that like these are the 5 companies that OpenAI said do not invest in. Glean was one of them. I remember I took a demo with Glean too, and their focus was in internal system AI, whether it's digital assistants, and I think that's the that was the what was that? Oh, that was the internal search. I think companies like Corveo um, is one of those. So if they're positioning themselves as the enterprise level enterprise search, I think like that's a pretty big market, and there's a very big reason you put that comment with Glean's name in there, because I think that's a very intentional that you do that. So that's the one I'm actually curious about to see if there's any uptick from major enterprises on their internal search connected to your data.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've done the Perplexity show, and if people are interested, like we may do another Perplexity show going into what Jumi just talked about, like our experience with that. Because I'm like Andy. I use Perplexity I use Perplexity AI more than I use any other AI at this point. ChatGPT is a close second, so Cloud, but Perplexity is like one-stop shopping for me, and it has shopping. It does actually have one-stop shopping. So
Yeah, I
uh,
remember very early on when Perplexity came out, Carl did the example of using Perplexity to purchase some things in Calgary locally, and it was really impressive. Way back when, this is a year ago, I'm sure, if you recall when you did that, Carl.
Yeah, it was. I remember that too because it was. I think I was using it. I remember I used it on Black Friday last year, trying to get deals on couches that I was trying to buy, and taking pictures and comparing it to ChatGPT and which one would get me the better deal. I never
so
got a
the
deal.
the CEO was being interviewed in the last couple of days about their ads and their one step purchase, right? The like buy now one step kind of thing. And what he was saying was that Perplexity searches have higher level of intention than Google searches, right? So when you're searching the product in Perplexity and you want to know what people have said or what the prices are, those lead to more purchases, was my understanding of what that meant. Whereas people do research on Google a little more like, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not as ready to purchase. When we're in Perplexity, right? I do that too. Like, okay, so what did Reddit say about this? Like, is this is this real? Is this not real? Is this helpful? Yeah. Okay. So thank you. And yes, people are thinking a Perplexity features demo would be helpful. So maybe we'll see that soon. Carl, do you have things that you want to talk about for Notebook? Because that was one of the shows that we did in the last 10 days.
Yes. So
Will you get closer to your mic?
I don't know why this is not running. Is it better now? Don't worry, I
No.
bought an SMB7. So,
Okay.
like by tomorrow, I'll like have jacked this. Mind you, I just want to say this mic has been with me since 2011, 2012 when I did my very first podcast. I think it's like it's run its course, but it's so
Yeah.
sentimental because I've
It has
had it.
served you well.
It has served me well. It's the AT 2020. It's still a good mic. If you want to purchase it, you should do it. Okay, so I wanted to. I don't know. Not sure, man. This is as
Oh,
good as it's
it's
gonna
good.
get. Um, I think. Okay, so for Notebook, what they've added a couple new features, and one of the things that I think people are looking for is the audio. It's the customization of audio overviews. So I'm gonna share just my screen here of I just put in a random. I think it was this one is the study on. I think we talked this last week or a couple days ago, where there's a new technique to see if we can get 95% decrease in electricity from large language models based on a integer study. So here's the study. But now what you could do, before you could just press generate and it would generate, but now you can customize and you can tell it what to focus on, like focus on this specific topic, this source. I think people have been trying to also do the different type of tone with it as well. Now this is part way. I think people have wanted to change the voice, which I think you can do in Google Illuminate, not necessarily here. So if you want to try a different, if you want to change the voices, go to Google Illuminate. But here you can be more intentional on what you want um, the guests or the hosts to talk, how they, what you want them to talk about. I can only imagine eventually you'll be able to really deep dive in the specifics as it gets a little bit better. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because one of the things that's true about Notebook LM's audio overview, that podcast representation of the document or the collection of documents that you put into the notebook, is that it generates it and there's good back and forth banter, but in some cases it kind of goes astray from where you would want the presentation to go. And we've promoted the idea that within a company, you could use Notebook LM to collect some documents around a certain subject that you want to create a simple introductory podcast to that your new employees or existing employees might listen to. But you want more control over what is actually said. They make their own decisions in that AI generation to highlight this and then follow with this and it may not be the right sequence that you want. What has just been released is the ability for you to ask the AI to edit and modify the podcast presentation. And I think we should actually work on generating an example of this where we have here's what it did just without any instruction at all. Here's what the podcast sounds like now when we gave it further instructions.
That's amazing. I know that they've been working on it like that. So one of the things that is true about both of the stories that are companies that we talked about so far, programs, I guess, is that they are really responsive, right? So they are functioning like a startup now. Perplexity is, I think, still technically a startup. The Notebook team within Google isn't a startup, but they're functioning like it, and that is really exciting to see, because both of those services are really responsive to what they're seeing people want and how they're using it and what would be helpful next. and that's part of why it stayed in the I don't know, I don't think it's still a hype cycle, right? But it stayed in the conversation, in the zeitgeist of what we want to talk about as things that are really helpful. Great. So, anybody else have another update they want to talk about
How
for
about you, Beth?
I was going to talk about perplexity.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I stole your thunder on that one.
No.
Actually, Carl
Um,
was going to talk about perplexity if he was here on time, I know, because in the
Yeah.
Slack channel, which we use in the background, not during the show, but all the way through the day, there's a lot of conversations that go back and forth. And Carl is one of the most prolific when it comes to finding and publishing in our Slack channels what it is that would be of interest to you as an audience. And his main contribution yesterday, there were several, but one of them was about perplexity spaces
yeah.
and the advances that perplexity is making.
So, the other thing that I thought was really interesting was I am continuing to see things about Canvas, ChatGPT Canvas, but that it is slightly disappointing. So, like the artifacts part where it's going to be able to run something isn't as good as Claude artifacts, right? Claude can show you more, you can do more in that, and Canvas is really much more of a text or code based uh, editor that you can have conversations with. Because I initially thought, oh wow, this was coming after artifacts, but it's a little more coming after Copilot and like cursor. Did you agree with that?
I think what's fascinating about Canvas, and I think we talked about this a little bit, where I think Dan Shipper had a blog post about he thought the large language models, artifacts, Canvas, maybe perhaps were building their their own kind of operating system where, well, if you do your editing in ChatGPT, if you do your numbers or create your formulas, do the analysis using advanced data analysis, and then if you create your presentations using Dolly, why would you need to go to all these other? Obviously, they don't have the capabilities and the features as those other three. But I'm thinking, okay, where are they going with this? Why did they put this out? I'm still banking on, hey, the agentic features, like they need to add these things. Then what can you do with an agentic feature? What can you do with voice mode to tell it to do stuff? So it's like, hey, I want you to edit line 3, change this. But to be able to do that, you have to have the tools to enable that. So maybe they're putting all the tools in, and this is all conjecture and speculation, but wouldn't it be easier if you had all the tools in place to be able to do that with voice and then agentic? Like it's like, I need to do this. So that's what maybe a concept. And I would imagine they'd probably be able to show the code as well.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You were also there was an event recently, right, talking about the direction that OpenAI is going.
Yes, so that was a Q&A at Dev Day, and I actually built it into my discovery presentations where um, Sam Altman was saying how there's two things. I think it was pretty important. There was a post yesterday saying the rate of change of AI, people can't fathom it. Like
Mhm.
they don't. Society is good enough to adapt, but because of how fast this is, he doesn't know if they can adapt with all the tools that are coming out from all the various companies. Then at Dev Day, he said 2025 is when agents will work. People get used to new tech quickly, but this will be a big deal. People will ask an agent to do something that would have taken them a month, and it will take an hour. Then they will have 10x agents. Then they'll have 1000x agents. So when he says things like this, And even Paul Reitzer says, hey, we've got to actually pay attention because back in 2021, he said a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Then ChatGPT came out. So it's like, well, Dario Amodei actually said in his 14,000 word blog post, something very similar.
Right.
So I was like, well, when two of the heads of the top AI labs say something and they've said it multiple times, I can only assume. I know a lot of cynics will be like, well, they're doing it for investors. So I'm like, well, no, they've already closed their 6.6 billion. So I do feel everyone's working on agents. We see HubSpot doing it. We see Salesforce doing it. Microsoft says it. So it was like, well,
Yeah, so I think you're talking about, I didn't see the Dev Day presentation that you saw. We love it that Carl gets to go in behind the scenes on these things as our most technical of all of us. But OpenAI, and this is an important update, OpenAI released the concept and the feature of what they call swarm of agents. So swarm of agents, you guys can help me in elaborating on this, but swarm of agents is a feature or a function within OpenAI, which actually creates the process of multi agent interaction behind the scenes just in response to one of your queries in OpenAI. So if you ask it for a simple thing, it might actually delegate to an agent that's tasked with that simple thing. And then if you ask it something as a follow-up question that actually goes to a different area of expertise, it's going to send a different agent out to do that one. And then it's going to have those agents come back with their responses to the central communicator with you, that conversational assistant, and then assemble those into the appropriate integrated response. So this is the amazing thing is they're not just building it so that you can invoke your own agents. They're building agent like processes into their own application, which is very interesting.
Yeah. So the thing that I find really interesting about this is that we don't really have like a paradigm for it, except that um, we've seen videos of drone technology, and in fact, if you watch the Olympics, you could see that that there was drone technology there. I think there was like I'm thinking of I've seen them more with Chinese drones, but drone technology so that you have individual drones that are in contact with each other and then can come together and form something, right? So often they're like lit up in some way. Like think of you're looking top down at like the marching band, right? And then the like, oh, okay, now they're in this formation, now they're in this formation. Um, that is a visible way of seeing what swarms look like, right? Because we don't really have a way of thinking of the swarm, but that is the technology that is embedded in that kind of idea. So they can be spun up. They have some core central uh, like it's all part of your account, or it's all part of that system prompt, or it's all part of that knowledge doc, right? So you have those sorts of things. Everybody's got some sort of central foundation, and then they're spun up in their specialized ways. They're communicating together, but they can then come back together and like download what uh and like now all that information comes back in I'm saying download. I don't know that it's a download, right? Like this is new enough that the words don't really word for this, but it can like you can send you can send the swarm out, or you can send the agents out, and then then everything that each agent knows, all the other agents know, right? Like that's a way to do it, and then it can share it with you, and more we are the right important part of this process, but also the weakest part of this process.
Very
Carl.
interesting. Yeah. So the OpenAI swarm framework is experimental still,
Mhm.
and I haven't looked at it. Do you guys know where you can go to play with it?
I've seen it with
Uh,
other things, not OpenAI.
I think they released it. I think it's on GitHub. I think
That
it's
would
either
make sense.
GitHub or Hugging Face. I can't remember where they posted it, but they did say it wasn't supported. I have a feeling though they want to see what the use cases people can think of. I was just
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
well, we're just gonna put this out, and I was like, let's see, because I feel that sort of there has to be a reason for you put something out like that
Yeah.
and just be like,
Yes.
hey,
Yeah.
go
They,
play
they're
with it.
user testing.
Yeah,
They're doing user testing with it.
yeah,
Yeah. Within the hands of pretty sophisticated users when you put it up
yeah,
on GitHub.
yeah,
Now, the idea of the experiment is to design the framework that will orchestrate networks of agents. So this is what Beth was talking
Mm,
about. So you have multiple agents. And so the abstractions that they developed around this were agents that have specific, task instructions and handoffs. The handoffs let the one agent that just got their task spawn another agent and give it a delegated task that's in support of their own. So you can see it's kind of a recursive network of agents, and that's sort of a spawning swarm. I think I'm going to
yeah.
coin that. We want a spawning swarm, not just those are the members of the swarm, but you can spawn as many additions to the swarm as you want.
right.
Yes,
And
yeah.
Jude is asking some interesting questions here. Like, do the agents have unique talents and abilities so that you're getting different flavors of expertise?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is absolutely yes, because the foundational model that's basically spawning these agents has an enormous universe of various areas of expertise.
Right.
And you can't call on all of those various areas of expertise simultaneously, but you can branch off an agent and say, focus on this area, and it's going to call on the latent space within the deep neural network that has all that it needs in that, while another agent is focusing on another area, and then those things come back together in the handoff and in the aggregation. So yes, they're very, very specific, each of the agents.
Right.
They're I guess the framework, the swarm framework, the orchestration is in part to design the spawned agent in a way that it calls upon this unique expertise that already exists in the large model, but may also require that it go out to the web, right?
Right.
So an agent will have actions as well. So it could actually, one agent could say, okay, I have to go figure out everything about this area. Here's what I know from the internal representations. That's a term in the deep neural network. And then I need to go out to the web and do some search here to find some additional things. So it becomes very expert very quickly. Good question.
Right.
I think we're gonna cover that in our discussion on agents because the way
Good
that
point.
some people think about agents would be there's the HubSpot, Salesforce. This is a very specific task that this agent's going to do. Maybe add a couple, or maybe we're talking about in the swarm. And Andy, what you're talking about is like, can like the agent that does stuff on multiple platforms, not just one specific platform, the agnostic agent that goes and does stuff for us. So curious to see like how that um where that where it goes and how does that work? Like
Hmm.
does our agent now interact with the swarm agent? Does our agent interact with the platform agent? Do we actually have to do any work? We just tell the agent, I want you to go to HubSpot and tell the agent to do this. Okay, got it. Or does our agent do it for us? That I'd be curious to see if everything that we could do in Salesforce, can our agent just do it for us? Then why would we need their agents? Or
Yeah.
would their agents make it? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's bring up Cisco's comment about or describe that agent swarm describing an organization in a business. And yes, Cisco, that's right on. And I want to refer back to something we covered on this show, which was an experiment done at the University of Waterloo. Not an experiment, but actually a process that they're building where they have a startup made up of agents, a CEO agent, a CTO agent, a CMO agent. Each of those agents has a unique area of expertise and responsibility, just as in an organization. And each one of them has to fulfill its mission in coordination, in orchestration with the other agents. So a very similar kind of thing from Swarm or to Swarm. And yes, you're right. This is, agents will ultimately be active in organizations. And it could be that organizations choose to be founded on agents rather than on humans.
Yep.
It goes back to our monkey fingers, our conversation, and 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 will people be reporting to the agent? And because like we still need people to do things with their monkey fingers, so will I'm just thinking our one person $1 billion valued company will have, our CTO agent, our COO agent, who then probably will create their own swarm of agents, who then at the very bottom of the totem pole is the human monkey fingers,
Well,
which
right? It's
yeah,
are we becoming the ultimate puppet? And the monkey fingers, monkey fingers is something we talked about a couple months ago, I think, which was this idea like, will you be collaborating with AI and the AI will say, okay, I need you to use your monkey fingers to do this
yeah,
because there's only so much that an AI can do, right? I
yeah.
need you to use your human face and like have
Yeah.
this conversation.
Will be relegated to okay, what's going to, you've analyzed our internal network. Oh, you want me to go restart the router? Oh, okay.
Right, right. It's
That's
like we
my
need to
job.
push the
I
button.
gotta go
That's
push the button. Yeah.
a monkey finger that pushes the button. But to go back to the Tesla demo and Tesla being like an AI robotic company, like they were monkey fingered, right? Like they're not as dexterous and that kind of stuff, but our monkey fingers may not be unique for very much longer or needed in that same kind of way. I still don't think you want like a, I don't know, $18,000 robot to go and push a button, but maybe like they don't need light. Like there are just so many things.
Right.
Those robots were human assisted though, like they weren't
Yes.
legit autonomous. So
So they
I think,
needed monkey fingers.
yeah, they needed definitely they yeah, they were not autonomously just walking around, like they're actually people. It was really funny because I was like, are those autonomous? And then they're like, no, they're tell us something. I was like, oh, so people were just controlling them and then answering the questions. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Before we wrap up, I know we're running out of time here. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Exocom's comment in the chat. It says custom GPTs died long ago. And I disagree with you because I use them daily. So but I built them and I built them for my own use. So I think there's probably a significant number of custom GPTs that are in active utilization that we don't see because they're private ones that have, individuals or companies have built to do that. And I can tell you that our colleague Brian Masseri, he is a master at building custom GPTs. He can launch one like in 30 seconds while we're talking on the show. And he's built these hundreds of them for customers of Scaled Consulting, which is the firm that he is the AI expert for. So they haven't died yet, but there are plenty of competitors, including Perplexity, that are trying to put some pins in it. And I also wanted to just close out by saying, we have a lot of Canadians on this show. I don't know why that happened, but we've got Carl in Calgary. We've got others, all over the expansive Canadian thing. And I think it's important to mention to everyone that I was a landed immigrant in Canada between 1978 and 1981 when I was the director of skiing at Sunshine Village, which is, a venerable ski resort in Canada, then the largest ski resort there. So I have great affinity for Canada. And my ex-wife, my first wife, is from New Liskeard, Ontario.
Absolutely. Okay. And Jen, I don't know if we mentioned Jen. Jen is also Canada. So yes, so many things. So we're gonna wrap it up here. We've got a bunch of great shows coming next week. We will likely talk about Dario Amadei's 14,000 word um the blog posts and the how people feel about that, because people are on one side or the other. It's one of those like lightning rod kind of experiences. We will likely talk about agents, and maybe we'll talk about perplexity too. If not next week, definitely the week after. What we are doing with this show is we are a community for each other, and we're trying to be the community for you. So if you have ideas about what you would like to see us do or talk about, please reach out to us. And I am going to put up the QR code. This will get you to our website, which is just a one-page website right now, but we've got a bunch of things behind the scenes coming for that. You can also sign up for the newsletter there, and the newsletter does a little bit of a deep dive into each of the subjects that we've talked about this week, and we're really proud of it. Seems really good. Okay, thanks everybody. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Aloha.